Amy said this, a question that came in said, anyone got a quick intro to IP? Every so often we keep our feelers out. Ideally, I'd like to get something positively geared, but not sure that's possible right now, or even if that's the best option. Pros, cons, I'm sure I'm oversimplifying things, and that being a landlord is significantly dearer. Not long, come across a 1-bedroom unit, 4 on the block, would be looking at putting 20% down, cash, not using equity. Rent is expected around $295 a week, mortgage repayments around $1,091 a month. We'd be in essence just be paying rates, sewage, strata, insurance, property management fees and maintenance. Our PPOR is approximately 620k value, owing around 180k. We have a decent chunk in offset. Only other debt is my HEX, no other loans or credit cards, Afterpay, etc. We have 3 dependents aged 5 to 11. Not really sure how an IP would affect tax and Centrelink. FTB and carer's allowance, don't get an income support payment.
So lots going on there. From a casual bystander, what do you take from that?
Absolutely nothing, Glen. I mean, there's a lot of acronyms in there. There's a lot that I don't understand.
IP, investment property.
Yes.
But look, it's funny. I actually did a little bit of research and assumptions based on the numbers that we've got. So my gut feeling is I think they're on the fence whether they want an investment property or not. And they're doing some analysis. Not long came across this blew over my desk, this opportunity. Let's do some numbers rather than kind of being a bit strategic and looking, right, we want to build wealth and have an investment portfolio with property. That's kind of my number one overarching thing. Positively geared in this climate in Australia, it's very hard to get positive cash flow / geared property. So it's not impossible, but it is quite hard. But the numbers that I've looked at, it's renting about $13,500 a year, which basically means, and it's a 1-bedder, I'm thinking it potentially is more regional property. I don't know. And even based on a 5% yield, which would be considered medium to high yield, we're looking at purchase price about $270,000, right? Call it 270. Then they said would likely be putting down a 20% deposit with cash, not equity. So realistically, we'll call it $60,000 of that. There is no way under the sun I'm putting down a 20% deposit for an investment property if I've got equity in the home and if I've got cash on the sideline. Now, I'll explain why. Just as a normal person out there, do you know where I'm heading with this? No? And that's why we're here, Shane.
That's good. I'm here to be educated, Glen.
So, effectively, if the mortgage, they've got 180K on their mortgage, right, which they're paying interest on, and that interest is not tax deductible. If they went and got another loan for an investment property for, say, $210,000, is that right? Yes, $210,000 plus 60 is 270-ish. Mm-hmm. If they went and got another mortgage for $210,000, what they're doing, they're paying interest on $210,000 that's tax deductible. Whereas if they were paying interest on $180,000, it isn't tax deductible. So if they have that cash sitting on another account or in an offset account, I would commit that $60,000 to the principal mortgage and pay that down to $120,000 and pay less interest that's non-tax deductible and bump up and borrow 100% for the $270,000 and have that as deductible. So there's a general rule of thumb when we've got debt, we want to, because at the end of the day, they've got the same amount of debt, whether they put the deposit down on the investment property and make the mortgage that's tax deductible lower, or borrow against the home and and have the lower non-deductible debt on the home. So that's all day long I'm doing that. So that's just and there's some psychology at play there. Sure, you can run along and do that, but if you really want to maximize the situation, you're probably keeping that money in the offset account and borrowing 100%. And the reason I say that is if we have a look at the home loan, the property value 620, they've got a mortgage at 180 at the moment. Now, I don't know where that 60 grand is, whether it's loan owing 180 and they're only paying interest on 120, or don't know where the offset is, but regardless, if we take away the 180 from 620, there's $440,000 of equity in the property. Now, equity in the property is what you own. The loan to value ratio is about 29%. So 29% loan against the value of the property. So what we know that when it comes to using equity to buy investment properties, you can't use the full 440 that's free. We've always got to have a spare 20% buffer against the main house. So based on that, they do have $220,000 of, they call it quote unquote, usable equity. And because we only need to secure 20% or $60,000 against this property that's probably worth 270, 300 or whatever that is, they've got enough usable equity to do that. So a good mortgage broker, like Sphere Home Loans, would be able to help you there. Any other questions, or are we going to keep going?
No, let's keep going. That's great.
Let's keep going. So then we need to have a look at, because they mentioned, where are we? Yeah, so like what the after tax cash flow is. And I wanted to kind of make this as easy to understand. So the income of the property is about $13,000. The mortgage repayment, $12,000 per year. Not sure if that's principal and interest. Probably doesn't matter at this stage. I'm assuming $500 for landlord insurance. I'm just assuming that rates are about, I don't know, $1,200 for the year. I'm assuming that the strata or the body corporate for the for the unit, because it's one of four, is around $4,000 a year, or $80 per week. And management fee for the real estate agent, I've just assumed about 7%. It might be more, it might be less. And when we're doing these initial numbers, we just want a bit of a straw man or a steel man. What do they call it?
Straw man, I think.
Straw man. Because I hear American podcasts and they say steel man, straw man. Is steel man like
Burning Man?
This is it? And straw man's just whatever. Beyond the scope of what we're talking about. I'm a curious guy and I wanted to know if you've got the answer. So what we're looking at is the total expenses to hold and run that property is going to be around $18,500, $18,800. We know that the rental income is $13,000, so there is a $5,800 hole, okay? Now, because it's negatively geared, I've just assumed that if two people were earning $80,000 a year, they would have, and if these two people had that loss of $58.61 split on their own tax returns, that's about $2,900 each, or we'll call it $3,000 each that they would deduct. Effectively, the after-tax loss for the property, when it all comes and washes up, it's going to be around $4,000 because the tax safe per person is probably around $900. So then you go, okay, so why would I buy a property if it's costing me, after it all washes up, $4,000 per year? And this is where, enter turn of the century property capitalist pig walks in, and it's called negative gearing, baby. So the property's running at a loss, and the gearing is basically borrowing. So we've borrowed for it. The expenses, it's negative, so we claim that. And the goal is to eventually get to carry that $4,000 a year, and hopefully over time, that property is growing at more than $4,000 a year. So that's this whole strategy. Now, it falls apart pretty fast if you're buying 1 million properties and they're each negatively geared, because you're going to have to carry the bag and you'll run out of cash flow. That's why a lot of property spruikers will encourage their clients to set up companies, trusts to buy properties, but that's just been hit on the head by CBA and Macquarie just in the last couple of weeks, because people were finding these loopholes. Because if I was capped out with my 5 investment properties in my own name because of servicing, I can just go and set up a company. The bank would lend it money and not look at the personal servicing because it's a different entity. They would still tie a directly guarantee to the property, but in terms of servicing, so they're closing that. So the question is, if this unit was 270, 300 grand, we'd want it to be growing at a rate more than 4 grand a year holding costs. And for example, I've just put into a calculator, $270,000 property growing at 4% a year. Might be more, might be less, not sure. You know, the second year, it could be worth 280. So we know $10,000 is worth more, is higher than 4,000. So all that to say, do what you want. If you want to buy the property, buy it. Not really sure how an investment property would affect tax and Centrelink, family tax benefit and carers allowance. I don't get an income support payment. Look, generally, and this is a broad brush stroke, with this type of stuff, we talked about the start, they're not going to add back the loss as income or anything like that. So I think you should be fine. And in terms of, and they don't really look at equity. So I'm just going to put if this was the Retire Right podcast, Martin or Nathan or Vince would know the answer, but it's kind of beside the point here. I think this whole thing, we have 3 dependents aged 5 to 11. How do you want to build wealth? That's the question. You know, I don't think, they said, and that being a landlord is significantly dearer. I don't think it is. It's just the part of doing business. The pros, it's actually fascinating. So this book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, we are currently writing the sequel, The Quick Start Guide to Your First Property. And this, I'll tell you something that happened with this book after the break. But just this week, we were doing a big writing session, and we're kind of like looking at the pros and cons of, do we buy the house to live in or the investment property? Like, you do not want to just walk into being a landlord. Like, you really want to have that, find your why. We want to build wealth. And I think have a strategy, however small. It could be that, well, we're just going to salary sacrifice to superannuation and not worry about being a landlord. But on that book, Rachel and I, who I'm writing the book with, we kind of got discussing, because we want to put down, you know what I'm like, don't do this. And she's like, calm down. Like, I don't think we should tell people not to buy a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm like, all right, well, can we put some quote unquote considerations? Like, we're not buying a studio high-rise apartment. That's a consideration. So I was ready to just go, nah, not doing it, not doing studio apartments, not doing 1-bedroom apartments as investments. And she's like, no, I'm not going to go that far, because there could be a good little one better. And it's so funny, I'm reading this today. A block of 4, perfect. If it's got good yield, like, it could be a good little property.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's lots to consider. But I think, Amy, you need to go back to your why, and you and your partner need to work out if you want to own property. I'm going out on a limb to say your incomes are probably higher than 80 grand each, given that they've been able to smash so much of the mortgage already. And I would probably say, if you do want to go down this road of an investment property, spending 15 grand with the buyer's advocate, reach out to John Pigeon in Visage Property. They've got BAs all over Australia. Just pay a buyer's advocate. Like the next property I buy as an investment, I'm not finding it myself. I just get, I don't know, if it's like I know too much to now be like hands tied.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So invest in a good BA. I would probably say if you are going down this road and you're wanting to have an investment property, have a look at the total situation. I would really be encouraging you, let's get away from one bedroom unit on a little 1 of 4. Let's see if we can buy a brick veneer freehold property and maybe spend 500 or 600 somewhere. That's kind of, if you're going down that road, let's really go down it and really double click and double down on the fundamentals of doing this. So it's a bit of a non-answer, but hopefully that has given some people to think about that. Hey, it's Glen here. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You made it to the end. Can I ask a favor? Can you hit that like button and maybe hit subscribe if you want to get notified when we release further videos just like this one, whether you watch the Money, Money, Money podcast or Retire Right. And remember, if you want to learn more about investing, I've got an investing book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, and there's a link in the description to get your hands on a copy. Thank you so much. Bye.